Now, Josh, at the other end of this issue, in terms of young people applying for medical school, one of the concerns has been that there is a suggestion out there that if young medical students are not prepared to participate in these sorts of procedures, that they'll actually be screened out or weeded out at the very beginning. Explain to me how that's not a significant violation of a person's charter rights.
Well, there's a close analogy here between this situation that you've just described and the Trinity Western case, where you're talking about access into the public sphere.
Right.
So the Ontario Court of Appeal in the Trinity Western case basically said, you can believe whatever you want about same-sex marriage, about sexuality, about homosexuality, whatever. But once you seek a public benefit,
right,
then you have to submit to Canadian values, which includes acceptance of such relationships. If you are not willing to go that route, we will deny the public benefit, and you can continue to believe whatever you want. If we analogize to this situation, to this context, you could say, well, no one's forcing you to help anyone commit suicide. But if you want the public benefit of being a doctor, of being paid by tax dollars, then you have to submit to this, otherwise we will deny this public benefit to you. That's the danger of that kind of reasoning.
And you could see how that kind of reasoning could obviously affect other professions.
Yes.
The most obvious application of that reasoning would be to public school teachers, would it not?
Yes. It could apply to any profession. It could apply to churches applying for charitable status, which the society would see as the conferral of a public benefit. So it's a slippery slope down the road to the complete erosion of religious freedom in the public sphere. Our society will start saying, you can believe whatever you want so long as you keep it to your buildings, to your communities, and you don't step into the quote-unquote public sphere.
Well, and that brings up one of the dangers in this whole process is this idea that we can somehow isolate ethics from public benefit, from public life in general. Diane, you were mentioning that there's an increasing trend towards, in essence, divorcing the question of ethics from the entire process of preparing for life as a physician.
Yeah, and it's a bioethicist in Kingston who actually wrote an article about this. And to quote him, he said, "Doctors must put patients' interests ahead of their own integrity. If this leads to feelings of guilty remorse or them dropping out of the profession, so be it. It is reasonable to screen applicants to medical school and eliminate those unable to put aside their moral values." Wow,
that's a remarkable statement.
I think it's important to note that that kind of comment is not the divorcing of ethics from practice. It's just the usurping of one ethical standard over another.
Right.
Really, what he's saying is that the ethical standard of participating in physician-assisted suicide trumps whatever ethical standard you may have claiming freedom of conscience or religion.
Right. So a particular ethical perspective has achieved ascendancy with respect to the legal process.
Exactly.
Right. Now, I have another question that I think is probably one that would be in a lot of minds. The average person sitting in a pew trying to think through this issue is aware that doctors have always helped their patients pass from this life to the next. We've all seen movies where a medic in World War II gives morphine to a soldier that's been mortally wounded. Why is it that that's considered ethically neutral or even benevolent, but physician-assisted dying is a bridge too far to carry on the World War II terminology? Explain that to us.
Simply put, assistance in dying or euthanasia promotes the premature passing of an individual, whereas palliative care, good quality palliative care, treats the underlying condition but does not hasten death. It's important to note the World Health Organization defines palliative care as such. It's an approach that improves the quality of life of patients and their families facing the problem associated with life-threatening illness through the prevention and relief of suffering by means of early identification and impeccable assessment and treatment of pain and other problems, physical, psychosocial, and spiritual. And then it goes on to define it as it intends neither to hasten or postpone death.
So that's the line.
I'd like to expand on that, though.
Yeah.
Occasionally, making someone comfortable because their pain is so bad, it may hasten their death.
Well, I was just going to say, because anytime
can
you're
do
administering morphine, you're hastening death, are you not?
It can, but the intention that you have when you're giving the morphine is to relieve the suffering. It's not to end the patient's life.
Right.
Whereas when you are giving medication for euthanasia, your
The intention is
purpose
to
is to kill them.
Right. All right.